We want to be able to make sure that people are teaching the things that are reproducible, not a fad. Rhinoplasty, you can't do fad stuff. You can't do the next and latest, greatest thing because, man, that doesn't work well.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first special episode of season 2 of the Rhinoplasty podcast with me, Dr. Cameron McIntosh. I've got 3 incredible guests. These 3 men, I think, had the biggest influence on my career as a rhinoplasty surgeon when I first met them 5 years ago. So all the way from Dallas, Prof. Rohrich, Prof. Spencer Cochran, and Paul Afrooz down in Miami. Welcome to the show.
Good to be here.
Glad to be here, Cam.
Thanks, Cameron. Good to be here.
Let me kick off with my first question, Prof. Rod. So the Dallas Rhinoplasty course. Give us the history of this because it's an incredible thing. It hasn't happened for the last 2 years. But where did this all start way back in the day?
I would say, the credit all goes to Jack Gunter. Jack Gunter was, the pioneer. He was the rhinoplasty master, trained in both ENT and in plastic surgery. It was his brainchild to, 39 year ago, say, listen, we need to teach rhinoplasty, specifically open rhinoplasty, to everybody. Facial plastic surgery, otolaryngology, and plastic surgeons, and do so in a very methodical way. And that really was Jack Gunter. That's so much better. That was Jack Gunter. He was a consummate teacher, a consummate perfectionist. He would not ever say take no for an answer, and he was truly at the cutting and bleeding edge. And we all knew him, and especially Spencer and I really knew him well. And he was a character. He could be a very tough character, but he always was true. He was a true friend and a true colleague. So that's where it started. And it started in, with 5 guys. It was John Tebbett, Steve Bird, Bob Sheffield, Bob O'Neill, and Jack Gunter, in a small little classroom in UT Southwestern. And I was rotating as a fellow. So I was just, there as a participant. But you can imagine with those characters, especially, having Dr. Tebbets and Bird, it was amazing. And it was just a few people. And really, it was only about teaching residents initially and teaching them open technique and to do it well, because especially in plastic surgery, and Spencer can comment as well, in plastic surgery, rhinoplasty was embryonic. It was all closed approach. Nobody really knew what happened under the hood because nobody could really see it and teach it. And, I was taught that at Michigan as well. So what Jack did is he opened a whole new world. He opened a world of open rhinoplasty and how to do it methodically, the Gunter graphic, all of those things, that really, I think they've transformed all of plastic surgery and rhinoplasty. I think that because of Jack, we've trained over 17,000 people in our meeting. And, and some of the current leaders in rhinoplasty, including these guys here today. So, it all goes to Jack Gunter. I mean, he's an amazing guy. And honestly, that's the reason I continue to do it, because to honor him and to really teach rhinoplasty.
Well, Dr. Gunter was always an educator and always was thinking, always wanting to learn himself. But I think a large part of the success of the Dallas Rhinoplasty Symposium, obviously, is due to Dr. Rohrich. I think he's being awfully modest here. He always says to be the best, you got to train with the best. And I think one of the great things about the Dallas Rhinoplasty Symposium is that year after year, Dr. Rohrich brings in the best rhinoplasty surgeons in the world to share their expertise, their techniques, their viewpoints and counter viewpoints. And it's always fun because there's always some disagreement, and it's the disagreement that makes the discussions lively, but it's also where people can really learn. And so, hats off to Dr. Rohrich for continuing the legacy that Dr. Gunter and these that older generation of surgeons started. But I feel like it's gotten better and better with each passing year. So I think it's in a good place.
Spencer, I recall.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, Dr. Rohrich, you've been very humble about it, but you have made the meeting exponentially better year after year. And I think the thing I admire most is that those of us who know you very well, we know you're very opinionated with regard to your approach to things, but you remain very objective with respect to the invited lecturers and very open-minded, all for the sake of education. And I think we've all learned quite a bit from all the speakers that you've invited over the last decade.
Well, we've always, it was one of the things that we all learned together. And we always wanted to bring, like Spencer said, and you've said, Paul, that we wanted to bring kind of the best of the best at that time. Now it's preservation. We're bringing all the world leaders to Dallas, from Europe and, Aaron and Dino, and they're all great guys. And boy, they're completely different than what I do and what any of you do. But, at the end of the day, I'm going to, say, listen, will I do some preservation? I probably will, but it's not another way of life. We've all been through so many things where it was always the best. You always should do piezo. You should always do diced cartilage. Always should do, tip graft. I mean, in plastic surgery and rhinoplasty, you don't ever always say always, as we've all learned the hard way.
So, Prof, I think one of the other strengths of the Dallas Rhinoplasty Symposium is that Dr. Rohrch's bringing in experienced and seasoned rhinoplasty experts. These are people who have been using their own techniques and advancing their own techniques for decades. It's not like he's bringing in people that have tried something for a year or two and they're just, hey, look at me, I'm the latest and the greatest. I mean, these are really time-tested principles that are being taught to the attendees. And for there's always new things, there's always innovations, but I think the goal is to teach surgeons how to be better and safer surgeons and to do the right things. And so, we're trying to teach techniques that are time tested, and there is room for innovation, but that's got to, be backed up by long-term results.
Okay. So has the focus changed from when it was initially for residents to now surgeons who are past that already and have practices that are working? So it's quite open to people from around the world.
Well, of course, it actually grew. So, the foundation still is the cadaver lab, where we teach the basic techniques and technology. And this year, we're going to teach preservation along with precision structural rhinoplasty. So we're all going to be doing parts of that. So it's going to be a blend of both of those. But so many of the participants, up to 30% of the people that come to the meeting actually have come 2, 3, 4 times. And because it's always different. Every year is different. So when people come and then they skip a year to say, wow, that's completely different. This year is going to be epic different, completely different. In fact, all of us are, I've actually, incorporated all of these preservation folks into even the precision rhinoplasty meeting. So that's actually going to be completely different. And we'll see what people say. And I think the good thing is, in the panels, we'll be very open and objective and, probably not quite as open as Jack would have been, but he really let it rip when, in the panels, which is a good thing. We really want people to, be their best and do their best. And it's like Spencer said, we want to be able to make sure that people are teaching the things that are reproducible, not a fad. Rhinoplasty, you can't do fad stuff. You can't do the next and latest, greatest thing because, man, that doesn't work well.
Okay, so Paul, I've got a question for you. 5 years ago, you were the fellow here for these two gentlemen. Tell the listeners, what are they really like? Because we know them on social media. We've seen these guys, but give us a few little funny things that have happened whilst you were a fellow.
Oh, gosh, the list of stories is endless, but I'll start with Dr. Rohrich. He's just such a revered plastic surgeon, so automatically people come and are very timid and really want to feel him out before. And I don't think anyone really gets comfortable around him ever. But for some reason, I just felt comfortable around him. I was just myself, and I think one of the things I realized is what a great sense of humor Dr. Rohrich has. We had some really, really notable belly chuckles throughout the year, with throughout the traveling and just hours and hours in the OR. So I think sense of humor is one thing that I realized about Dr. Rohrich prior to knowing him earlier. Of course, early on it was a very intimidating thing, but it just, I could let my guard down and really, really learn. And to this day, if I'm opening a nose that's been operated on 3 previous times, I just, the reason that I'm able to do that is just the amount of reps that I got with Dr. Rohrich. And with Spencer, I realized he likes Pearl Jam a lot. I'm just kidding. For some reason, every time I was in surgery with Dr. Cochran, Pearl Jam would be playing. So we always kid around about that.
And neither of us didn't like Pearl Jam. It was always on the radio.
Yeah. But with Spencer, I really got, I come to realize that he's a man of many interests. He loves rhinoplasty and is obviously very passionate and dedicated his life to that. But he's got many, many other interests outside of plastic surgery. I thought that was really neat. And also a great sense of humor. And we had a great time. And I've learned so much from both of these guys. And I'm just, eternally grateful for it.
And Spencer, tell us something about Paul. I mean, Paul's a bit of a rock star now. He set up base.
I'm having a hard time hearing you. Are you talking to me?
Yeah, we can't. Hard to hear you.
All I heard was my name and rock stars. Did I hear that right?
I wanted to know some stories about Paul, who's now set himself up in Miami.
Oh, well, I mean, all I hear is great things. He's taken on a lot of great cases. I mean, I think it's so good to have people that you train that excel. I love that. I've trained over 10 chairs in plastic surgery, and people like Paul make me happy when I see what they do and I see what they post, and also when I see their patients, and I love that. And then because that really takes the art to the next level. And we are here to make things better and to train people to do what we did and do it better. And I love that when I see somebody results and I go, wow, And I do that. When I see some of Paul's results, not all the time, but most of the time. It's amazing, and I like that. And rhinoplasty is not a easy operation, and especially revision rhinoplasty. So, I mean, honestly, I love that. And I think that makes me glow. That's what makes me tick, because, I have fellows and residents, and honestly, that's why I love what I do every day. And, it's people like Paul that are, doing great things, taking great care of patients. We never worry about, Spencer and I never worry about, oh my God, we're training another person to be competitive. I mean, my goodness. If anything, it just makes us both busier, right, Spencer? I mean, it's just.
Well, another thing is that the rhinoplasty education, it's a two-way street. I mean, Rod and I are both involved with training fellows and bringing them up to speed, but they sharpen us to the same degree. To have a fellow operating alongside of us, and for them to ask a question, why are you doing that? You have to be able to really think, okay, why am I doing this certain technique? You got to be able to answer the questions and answer them in a way that not only makes sense to the person you're teaching, but makes sense to yourself. And so I think that having the ability to be involved with some of the really up and coming surgeons and be sharpened by them at the same time that we're teaching, it's an incredible honor to get to teach this younger generation of surgeons, because I learn something from them every time they're with me.
I agree.
Yeah, so
It's really, that's why we do what we do.
So I want to tell a little story to the listeners out there. And the reason we're actually sitting here on this Rhinoplasty podcast is because of these 3 men. And I have to clock back to the IMR HIS meeting in Versailles in 2016, where I met Prof. Rod for the first time, and he invited me to come to Dallas, which I did a few months later. And there I met Spencer and Paul at the same time. And I was challenged to say, why does South Africa not have a rhinoplasty society? So then a group of us got together and we started Saucer, or the Rhinoplasty Society. And Spencer was actually one of our first, with Jeff Marcus, one of our first speakers. And then in the following year, Paul came over, and I'm still fighting to get Prof. Rod to come. It's going to happen. But yeah, it's a big shout out to all the listeners around the world, because this podcast would not have happened if it wasn't for the humility that they have of saying, we don't care about you being a competitor. We want to embrace and improve your skills as well. So that's something I admire greatly in you guys.
Thank you, Cam.
No, it's great. I mean, I'm very proud of what you're doing. You did the World Rhinoplasty Day and all those things. I mean, that's awesome. And I think you've really, sparked a real, incredible interest in all of Africa, not just South Africa. And I think really a tribute to you. I mean, it's phenomenal. We love that. And I will come, post-COVID here, I think in the next 6 months, I think those restrictions are going to go away. I mean, I'm going to Italy in a month, hopefully, but it's been a challenge. I've only traveled internationally about 3 times. It's a challenge now, but I think it's getting so much better. Hell, it was even a challenge in the USA for a while.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you each one last question before we call it a day. Paul, I'm going to start with you. For young guys wanting to start out, what are the pitfalls that you think they should be careful of?
Gosh, that's I could go on and on about that just based on personal experience, but I would say that I've had a tremendous training background in rhinoplasty between these two gentlemen, and I came out and I really thought that I was the hottest thing on 2 feet and I can take on any nose. And to some degree, that's you have to have a little bit of moxie and confidence when it comes to this, because this is a very challenging operation and it can be very unforgiving and very intimidating. But I would say just maintain your humility. Just because you read, there are so many tremendous resources out there, but because you know how to put in a transdomal suture, or and you think you've narrowed the domes and you think that's going to yield a beautiful nose, there are times when you're going to get served a slice of humble pie. You think you did everything right. So my advice would be take it slow. I think a pitfall is to just dive into some really complex noses. One of the things that Dr. Rohrich always said to his residents and fellows was, give it about 5 years until you start doing revisions. I don't think I waited, 5 weeks. And, I feel like I bit off more than I can chew, and I'm much better for it now, but it came at a high price. There's a lot of humility and going back to the drawing board that one has to do early on and forever in rhinoplasty. But my advice would be stay humble. Don't get discouraged. Approach it slowly in an incremental fashion with regard to complex cases, and objectively analyze your results and just constantly try to improve. So I think, does that address the pitfall question?
Beautiful. The guys love it. They loved your podcast last year on Dead Space, by the way. Thank you.
Oh, great.
Spencer, my next question for you. I still vividly remember the first time I came to visit you. In your practice, you have like a booklet of a lot of your cases, the befores and afters. And I was like, wow, this is great. And you said to me, no, there's only one. And you showed me that nose that has been the best. So my question is this: if you've done your 10,000 rhinoplasties or whatever many you've done now, and you've only had one perfect result, how do you manage that stress of being able to be satisfied with something that's not 100% perfect?
Well, I think you just hit the nail on the head. I think you talk to any true rhinoplasty surgeon, and they're never happy about their results. They're always wanting it to be better. They're always wanting it to, they always want to fine tune something. And it was something I heard Jack Gunner say time and time again in his discussion with patients. He would always say, "I've never done a perfect nose," and I saw plenty that I thought were pretty close to perfect that he had done, but that kind of stuck in the back of my mind. And so, I think we have to be our own worst critics, and that's the only way we're going to get better. Is that good enough is never good enough. And it's one of those surgeries I don't think we can ever conquer it. We can master certain aspects of it, but as soon as we get one thing mastered, there's going to be something else that throws us for a loop. So, to answer the question that you asked, Paul, I think he hit it on the head of the nail too. Is that you got to remain humble. You got to know your limitations. Don't bite off more than you can chew. Don't promise results you can't deliver. And I think that it would be real important that you master the tried and true basics of rhinoplasty before you start experimenting with new techniques. And often in case, I hear patients say that they're one of their desires for rhinoplasty. They say less is more. And so I think also starting out in rhinoplasty, something that'll keep you out of trouble is less is more. Be conservative, and those things can generally keep you out of trouble.
Awesome. Okay, so Prof. Rod, my question to you. Like, you recently finished editing the PRS journal, working from early hours of the morning, operating, the social media's going out, you got fellows, you got visitors, and you never seem to stop. What is the resilience? How do you find time to energize yourself again?
Well, Cameron, I think, it just comes down to what drives you. I think everyone has their own individual drive. What drives me is my passion for life, my passion for plastic surgery, and my passion for rhinoplasty. We do all, you only can excel if you have a passion for what you do. And really, it's got to be, if you don't have a passion for, let's just say, rhinoplasty, you can't ever be great. And you can't ever, excel. And it'll never be perfect. So it's the passion, it's the focus, it's the ability to really be self-critical of your results, as both Spencer and Paul mentioned. Because, with rhinoplasty, the more you know, the less you know. And I'll tell you, there are things that I see and do now that I didn't know even a year ago. And that's why when I see preservation, there are some pros and cons, but I think, I always worry about, and I told Dean Toriumi this in Miami, is that I have to be able to teach that technique like I teach precision rhinoplasty in the same way and have them get the best result because, there's no perfect rhinoplasty. We've all done thousands and it's a humbling operation. All I can tell you is just when you think you're great, you really are. Then you see your 2-year post-op and you go, okay, that didn't go so well. And, but, you have to be able to manage those. And I'll tell you, plastic and rhinoplasty is an art. It's managing those patients, not only preoperatively, but, how you manage their expectations. And the primary versus the secondary rhinoplasty patient, they're completely different operations, completely different patients and mindsets, and in the primary, you tell them the 3 things you can do. In the secondary, you tell them the 3 things you can't do, or a lot more. Because if you don't do that, those patients will not be happy. And that's why, not everybody, should have a rhinoplasty. It depends on, their mindset. And we've all been through that and we've all made those mistakes. And I think the best thing you can do is be true to yourself, be honest with your patients, and to follow them, as both Paul and Spencer said, because I'll tell you, the worst thing about COVID has been not being able to see my patients long term. Now they're finally coming back because we had to restrict them, at least in the United States. So now they're coming back. And it's so good to see 6, 12, and 2, and 5, and 10-year post-ops, because during COVID, we had to stop that. So I think it's a perpetual learning journey. And I think rhinoplasty epitomizes all of that. So it's your passion, it's your ability to be persuasive with yourself and to love what you do. If you do those three things, I think you're unstoppable. And the moment you lose your passion, it's over. It really is. I mean, if I lose the passion and I'm walking and I'm going up my elevator thoughts on that morning and I'm out of here, I'm going to go to Florida and smoke cigars,
Okay. Well, please don't lose your passion. But, guys, I mean, we can talk for hours. I'm aware that we've done 25 minutes. And on behalf of the listeners from like 70 countries around the world, I just want to say, number one, I want to say thank you for what you do. Thank you for your passion about rhinoplasty. But secondly, I want to say to the listeners, guys, if you want to get into rhinoplasty, there's only one place to go and get to Dallas, learn from these guys. You might have to go via Miami, see Paul, but get to Dallas. If you can, it will have a lifelong impact on you as a surgeon. So thank you so much, gentlemen.
Well, and Cameron, you're coming, right? You're coming as my guest, right? You're coming to Dallas.
If I can get this arm fixed, I'm coming.
All right, yeah, you got to come, and it's March 10th through the 13th. Preservation versus Precision, Interactive Lab. All these guys are going to be there, and so much more. It's going to be awesome. We'll see you in Big D live.
Fantastic.